Early this year, my friends, I've begun testing out this tent. This is the NatureHike Bear Ultralight 2-person tent. So throughout the year, I've been testing it out. I've taken this out almost a dozen times on backpacking trips. I've done waterproof testing with it. In this episode, I'm going to share my thoughts about this tent and whether or not I think it's a good candidate for summertime use. As with all of my reviews, I'm going to share with you all what I like, what I don't like, and I'm going to show you why something works or doesn't work. That way you can take that information and make the best decision for yourself. You can purchase the product if you want to, or you can skip it, because this channel is not about selling products, it's about information. With the Bear Ultralight 2-person tent, it also goes by another name. I'm not entirely sure why this is, why NatureHike has two different names for the same product. In some areas, they refer to this as the summer camping tent. And then again, in other areas, it's the Bear Ultralight Camping Tent. No matter the name, it's the exact same shelter. Before I begin with the pros and cons that I have for this shelter, let's go over the stats very quick. I do have a preview on this tent that goes over every single detail, so if there's something that's not answered in this episode, you will find it in the preview. To start, this is a 2-person tent. It's a 3-season tent. It is a single wall tent, meaning that the body and the fly are one. The tent features 2 vents, one on each side. It has 2 large mesh doors with a waterproof panel behind the mesh. This is what is known as an internal fly. It is available in 2 colors, green and also blue. When it comes to the materials, you're looking at a 20 denier silicone-treated ripstop nylon. The mesh is a B3 polyester. The poles are constructed from a 70D aluminum. The waterproof rating for the walls and also the floor is 3,000. And when it comes to the measurements, stored, you're looking at 20 inches by 6 inches. When it's all set up, it's rather large. This is 88.5 inches long, 56.5 inches wide, and it stands 41.5 inches tall. If you decide to purchase this tent, this is what you're going to receive. The storage bag, the tent, you get the 3 poles, you get 8 stakes, 4 guy lines, and a ground sheet is included. Let's talk about cost for a second. At the time of filming, you cannot find this on the NatureHike USA website, but you can find it at Walmart. You can find it at other online retailers, including AliExpress. The price from Walmart is $170. On other sites, I've seen it for as low as $140. At AliExpress, it's $140, but you have to pay a rather high shipping cost. The tent is not available on the American Amazon site, but if you're in Canada, you're in luck. It's only $100 there. To be honest, folks, I'm not sure why the tent is not available on the NatureHike website anymore. I don't know if it's being discontinued or if it's an inventory thing. When I originally ordered this tent, it was not available on the NatureHike American website. I purchased it off AliExpress for a low price. But a few months after I received the tent, it did pop up on the American NatureHike website, but now it's gone again. So I really don't know what that means. Before going any further in this episode, do me a favor, folks. Hit the thumbs up. That really does help the channel. I appreciate you, folks. Thank you very much. It's my hope that the company is taking this tent and redesigning it, because there are some issues here. At the same time, there's enough good things about this tent to build upon. And we'll talk about both of those points in just a minute. Before we do that, I want to talk about my experiences and use with this tent. I've begun testing it out early in the spring, so I've used it in the cold. Not super cold, but chilly enough. And I've used it in hot conditions. At the coldest point, maybe 25 degrees. At the hottest point, around 70. And as I mentioned before, I have roughly a dozen nights out in this tent. And it's with all of that experience that I'm ready to share with you the pros and cons that I have for this tent. Let's start with the pros first. Pro number 1 is quality. The quality of this tent is very good, especially for the price. I've had no issues when it comes to the seam work, when it comes to the seam tape, the stitching, or anything like that. The mesh is perfect. Everything about this tent looks really good. The construction is excellent. As far as the tent being waterproof, it is exceptionally so. I've used this tent in some rather strong thunderstorms and I've had no issues as far as leaking goes. I've had no water come in through the doors nor the vents on the sides. Next up, this tent is large. I mean, really large. It's over 7 feet long, so if you're a tall individual, this is something to consider. 2 people can easily set up inside of this tent. There's enough room for some gear, and both individuals can sit up inside of it. Considering the size of this tent, the weight's not bad, 4.5 pounds or so. Next, I have to say that I like the looks of this tent. I like the green color. I also like the blue version of this tent. Both look good. Next up, in dry conditions, the ventilation for this tent is exceptional. You can open up both of these doors. Both are very large. They allow for a lot of airflow to go inside of the tent. Also, you have the 2 vents, one at each side. With the doors, you can control how much wind and airflow is going inside of the tent. So let's say that you're on top of a mountain like we are here. The wind is blowing this direction, going into the tent. Let's say that you're a little bit cool. You can zip up that door as much as you want so that you can control the amount of air going into the tent itself. And that's something that you can do on both sides of this tent. Talking about the doors, they can be left partially open even when it's raining because of the eave on each side. Continuing to talk about the doors, because they're so large, it's easy to get in and out of this tent. You have the center pole which goes across the tent, and that's nice for hanging items. Maybe you want to dry some socks or hang a lantern, you can do so. Additionally, you have hooks on the inside that you can use as well. Those are the pros that I have for this tent. Now let's talk about the cons, because the cons that I have for this tent could be considered deal breakers. First off, the setup process of this tent is terrible. They call this the Bear ultralight tent. It's a bear because of the setup process. You have the two main poles. They are super long. They have to go through these sleeves here. They go into grommets from that point, and then you have some clips. The setup process of this tent is annoying, and I hope that the company goes back to the drawing board here and makes it a little bit easier. Get rid of the sleeves, add more clips, and those two little changes there would make this tent much easier to set up. Unfortunately, we're not done talking about the setup process. You have that third pole, the center pole. It goes through the tent body all the way to the other side. Sliding the pole through is fairly easy, but getting it to sit inside of the grommets is incredibly hard. So check this out, everyone. I've attached the center pole, the cross pole, to the other side, so now I need to attach it to this grommet here. This is extremely difficult to do. It's so close. Yet so far. One of the problems here is that you have this pull tab up here, and it really needs to be here because you're pulling at the top and you can't turn this over to go over this grommet very easily. It's a really, really bad design. Gosh. Oh! We're so close. There we go. As you can see there, it's not easy to do. It's just flat out ridiculous. Overall, the setup process of this tent is a nightmare. I don't like it. And it's annoying enough that I would not recommend this tent. Even though I love the size of this, I love that it's so waterproof, it is frustrating to set up, and it's also frustrating to break down. Especially with that center pole, it is extremely hard to get it out. And that's no exaggeration. Something else to mention here is that with that center pole, it goes through grommets, one on each side of the tent, and it doesn't seal perfectly. There are small gaps that go around that pole, and bugs can crawl inside of the tent. Next, folks, a big issue with this tent is condensation. This is a single wall tent. If you have to seal this up, condensation can be bad inside, especially with two people. If one person is using this tent, they can sleep in the middle, and it's not that big of a deal because they're away from the walls. But if two people are inside of this, they're close to the walls, and again, condensation can be a problem. Next, if it's raining, ventilation can be an issue. You can leave the doors partially open, but not completely. That limits airflow. Limited airflow means the tent is hotter, and also condensation will develop. Next, everyone, because there is no fly with this tent, there's no vestibules. That means that all of your gear has to go inside of the tent. That could be a problem depending on how many people are using this tent and how much gear they have with them. The last con that I have for this tent is this partial eave here. Because, again, there's no fly, when you get in and out of this tent in wet conditions, the water comes off of the fly or falling from the sky and goes right into the inside of the tent. And there's nothing that you can do to prevent this. There's no way to like partially open the door and get out without the inside getting wet. Because of the issues with water falling into the tent, because of the poor ventilation when it's raining, the condensation issues, I would not recommend this tent for wet weather camping. It can easily withstand a passing shower, even a thunderstorm, but this is not a tent that you want to be in for long periods of time in wet conditions. You don't want to be sealed up inside of this for a long period of time. This tent is going to excel in warm conditions, dry conditions, when you can have those doors open, the mesh up, it keeps the bugs out for the most part, but not completely, because again, you have two holes, one on each side where that center pole goes. Overall, everyone, there's a lot to like about this tent, but the company needs to go back to the drawing board because there's things here that simply do not make any sense. It's my hope that the company has taken this product off of the market. It's my advice that you don't purchase this tent, wait for a future version. Even if you can find this at an inexpensive cost, you have to consider the fact that the setup process of this is a nightmare. With my review here, I've listed plenty of cons concerning this tent. But I have to say, I do like this tent. There's something about it that's very unique. And that's why I'd like to see NatureHike continue to build upon this. They're on their way to having a good product, but it's not there yet. Wolfpack, it's now your turn to sound off in the comment section down below. What do you all think about the Bear Ultralight 2-person tent or the summer camping tent from NatureHike, whatever you want to call it? Again, everyone, this is a very interesting shelter. I like the fact that NatureHike is thinking outside of the box, but the overall design of this just does not work. It does not work. It could be so much better. This is not the worst tent ever made, but the setup process is really, really bad. If the setup process was easier with this tent, there's some things that I could overlook, such as the center pole. When you have a tent that has a frustrating setup, a setup that's going to slow you down, let's say that a storm is coming in and you need to set up your tent fast. This is not a fast setup tent. It takes a lot of work, it takes some strength. It's just highly irritating, and because of that, I do not recommend this tent. I'm looking forward to reading your thoughts, everyone. For now, I'm done. Take care, strength and honor. On to the next one. Bye for now.